Everyone, welcome back to Pro AV Today. Today we're diving headfirst into a topic where there are a lot of questions, especially when it comes to cabling and infrastructure, things like that. So that's going to be our focus, especially when we talk about things like AV installations, integrations, IT network protocols, things like that. The cable structure and the delivery method is now really more important as it's ever been, because there's just so many questions, so many different options and things like that, so many different departments. So I said, you know what, I'm tired of asking a lot of questions, so I've got to bring somebody on who knows a lot more than I do and can help bring some clarity to it. And that's Taft Strickland over from the Just Add Power team. Taft, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. It's weird you're not wearing a cowboy hat. So.
That is true. I've got one in my car. Maybe I'll just go get it and grab it for you. But I like that. I'm glad that you noticed that and remember that. But Taft, you and I had a chance to talk a little bit about CEDIA, and one of the things that we talked a lot about was this idea that the end user and the kind of operator of technology is more educated than they ever have been from an operational standpoint. But a lot of the challenges exist when it comes to infrastructure and understanding basic needs for cabling, distribution, things like that. And, that's not really actually only an an end user problem. That trickles all the way back up, in some cases, up the channel. Why is there so much confusion these days, would you say?
Well, there's a lot going on in the AV over IP world. We came into it about 13 years ago, and we were one of the first. All the way back to when all the other people that distributed video were like, hey, blah, 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 that seems to be illegal, But it's interesting right now, the end user, the end consumer, the technology director for a commercial project, they all have access to the internet, and they're all constantly reading, and they're all trying to stay on the cutting edge, which we all know is also the bleeding edge. And just at CEDIA, talking to multiple integrators going, well, you can't do this unless you do this, or you can't do that unless you do that. So there's a lot of misconceptions, and there's a lot of product that operates exactly the same. And then there are a couple of people that do it slightly differently. And we're one of the ones that do it differently. So we're partially to blame for confusion with infrastructure. But by the time we get in with that end user or that final decision maker, they realize what makes us different. They're like, oh, okay, cool. Then we're not spending as much money as I thought. Basically, I think the world has proven sometimes more information is not better.
Well, look, I always like to kind of point my finger back to the mandates in 08 and 09 for TV stations and broadcast networks to go HD. That really kind of was the catalyst for not only broadcasters, but organizations, enterprises as well, to really upgrade their bandwidth capabilities in their systems. And one of the first places that happened, right, is on that SDI level. And, especially when you talk about broadcast houses and things like that, making those updates. And then really the next generation being the 4K distribution, right? And that starts to cause a lot of confusion when you start talking about 3G SDI versus 12G SDI, and things like that. Just, on a surface level, talk about some of the core differences, especially on that SDI side between the faster and more that more traditional 3G SDI.
So we traditionally have always done HDMI over IP for our video distribution. We do manufacture a 3G SDI unit that works seamlessly with all of our HDMI product. And I don't know if we have a 12G SDI piece on the roadmap coming. Obviously, going to 3G SDI was absolutely massive. And you remember HD Network back when we only had one high definition channel on DirecTV that was owned by Mark Cuban?
HDNet. We all had it.
Yeah, HDNet. Yeah, we all had it. We all watched it over and over and over. We all know exactly what those rocks look like on that beach with that sunset.
I can't tell you how many times I watched the same Fleetwood Mac concert for years in HD.
Oh, yeah. And it was the first time I ever watched Olympic curling. Like, I didn't even know it was a thing until it was like, oh, look at that. Wow, look at the motion. Wow, that's amazing. So I feel like that really kind of put it into the forefront of the consumer's mind. Obviously, doing over-the-air broadcast of HD and killing old analog, and all of that, I think really kind of moved the ball forward quite a bit. That's I don't really know what else to say at this point. Well, we make a 3G SDI piece, and I'm familiar with, and we do lossless 4K, but it's over HDMI.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, right? Because it feels a lot like we almost have jumped over the 12G SDI world. I know that a lot of broadcasters and companies are going to get mad at me for saying that, but the reality is, right, we are having a lot more conversations these days, at least anecdotally, in my opinion, about IP network infrastructure, right? And distributing video over those networks, distributing audio, whether it's NDI or Dante, things like that. And, that we start to have different conversations right at that point. It starts to become conversations about lossless and lower compression and bit rates and things like that, and less about actual just signal transmission, right? And that's one of the great things that you guys have enabled historically as a Just Add Power team. Shameless plug for you guys. But you've helped lead a lot of those conversations and lead a lot of those innovations. Talk a little bit about some of the innovations recently that are happening, especially in that IP infrastructure world.
Well, I feel like there have become some standards. We've seen a lot of people go and adopt running 10 gig fiber at every location, which is a nice standard. It's just quite expensive, kind of all the way around. So that's been interesting to kind of see that happen on the OEM side for a lot of manufacturers. For us, our newest product, which is our MaxColor product, we're still on a gig network. And end-to-end certified Dolby Vision, full 4K 60, 444, whatever's coming out of your source is what's playing on your screen. And we're doing that with our own hardware, with our own codec. And that being said, we're eating up 850 megabits per source. So when you're on a regular 48 port switch, you've got enough backplane that's not an issue at all. When you get into larger infrastructure, where you're stacking switches or, doing, connecting SFP ports, things like that. When you're doing that, we always suggest you do that with fiber. So you're not losing bandwidth. That being said, good, bad, or indifferent, when you get to a spec of a certain size, you've got to pull fiber. And then for us, being able to link, aggregate those SFP plus ports to band all that bandwidth together is really necessary for really large projects for us. But the advantage to us is your cabling from the switch to the display is Cat6, PoE powered, low power consumption, 5 watt. Can't send voltage over fiber that I'm aware of today for any sort of PoE. So the kind of the pros and cons of the two. That's where I think some of the confusion lies, is people, I'm telling people you can do this, and you can do it over CAT. But when you get to a certain size, now you've got to also add in fiber, and then other people are saying, hey, we're doing it all 100% over fiber. And I think that's where some of that lies.
Well, look, as
far as confusion,
and you bring up a really good point too, right? And I'll even point back to kind of some of the things, whether it be PoE, whether it be Cat6, whether it be network switches, things like that. That is unfamiliar territory for a lot of people that are historically AVers, right? And that's where you start to have the conversation of the convergence of AV and IT, not only from a signal distribution standpoint, but from an actual infrastructure standpoint, what are some of those topics and really challenges that you're finding, maybe some miscommunication and even challenges on where you're trying to merge both of those worlds and have these conversations?
I mean, there's so many conversations going on right now, and they're all, piece by piece. Obviously, a conversation is far different if it's with a sports bar doing 30, 40, 50, 80, 150 displays than it is with, an international airport where we're having conversations with them that are at a higher level as, do we want it terminal by terminal, or do we want the whole entire property linked together? I guess the key now, and the thing that excites me, is there are conversations going on, because for the longest time it was, well, we're going to do it this way because this is how we've always done it. And how we've always done it has slowly disappeared. And with things like Dante coming along, Dante is now, it's a phenomenal, audio distribution product that's been widely adopted. And just like, doing video over IP, AV over IP overall, it just really solidifies the whole category when people can pull it together and make it as simple as possible and make it what we all dreamed it could be someday, because that's what it is now, right? It's on the network, because 20 years ago everybody kept saying everything's going to be on the network. 10 years ago we said we put everything on the network, and everybody said you're crazy. And now everything's on the network.
Right, and I mean, that being one of the reasons I joked about it a minute ago, obviously, that some of the SDI cabling infrastructure has been hopped, right? Because frankly, if you look at it, most places do have some level already of network and cabling infrastructure, especially when you start talking about IP. But it gets a little bit more challenging, right, when you start talking about bringing AV or distributed systems into it. And that's where I really recommend to people to bring in an integrator, right? Especially if you're maybe somebody who's traditionally more AV minded or IT minded, being able to bring in that expert to help answer a lot of the questions and let them be the person who's a little bit more prescriptive. But the reality is everybody doesn't do that these days, right? And as much as we'd love them to, because of whether it's cost, whether it's time, whatever, there are people who like to try and figure it out on their own. Where do you recommend that some of these people start when they're trying to build out some of these newer infrastructures from a cabling standpoint?
Well, it's interesting, because working with an IT guy for a really, really, really huge company who's trying to do a specific project in a specific location, said, I just talked to somebody and they told me I had to run fiber to everything. And he's like, but I have point of sale, I have access points, I've got, digital signage pieces, I've got, computers, I've got touch screens, I've got, and he went right down the line, and then literally flipped open a spreadsheet and said, these are my 183 devices that'll be here that I can't connect fiber to. And basically, if I'm doing just, 10 gig video over IP, these are the handful of devices that I need it for. So it was interesting working with him, even outside of the video distribution system, the audio distribution system, and then, sitting down at a table with him who's running IT, and the AV integrator, and then the guy that's doing all their security and their security cameras, and just kind of the whole 9 yards, going, what do you want? And it turns into, a couple of rooms with switches that are fiber linked together. And this guy's thinking, building in the future, everything's fiber, and then it turns out there's a handful of pieces that are, and most are not. So, that being said, at the end of it, the guy's like, this is basically, the same design I did, 4 years ago for a similar location. So I don't think we're really there yet on completely moving the ball on, network devices, really kind of changing whole infrastructure. I am happy to see people pulling Cat 6 all the time as versus, well, what's the difference between 5 and 6? Well, that number is 1. And I literally had a contractor say that to me, and then my favorite thing, which I've probably said 1,000 times since then, was he looks at me again and says, how many cats? 5 cats or 6 cats? Cats have 9 lives. And that has been stuck in my head ever since. And I'm going, okay, you're a contractor, you're pulling cable. I know you're making a joke, but you're also scaring me. Because this was also the guy that might be putting the RJ45s on, which is, as you know as well as anybody else, is similar to playing Operation in the 80s. You know how stressful that was.
It is miserable trying to re-terminate those things.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it always cracks me up. Just I feel like people throw caution to the wind, like who's the lowest common denominator, who's the cheapest, who can come in and pull my infrastructure, who can pull my cabling, and the number of times it's been like, well, that wire's in a knot. I wonder how that happened. So, we're still in that world of copper. I'm glad it's moved to Cat 6 for the most part. And I'm happy that everything we build is PoE because I hate power supplies. It's just one more point of failure, So that's kind of where things are at on infrastructure overall.
Well, look, Taft, I appreciate you coming on today, but I'd be remiss if I didn't give you a chance to kind of do the shameless plug and talk about some of the new stuff happening over at Just Add Power. I know you guys have some big events coming up as well. Tell me about them.
Yeah, so our Max Color product is out, and I'll talk for a minute. If you bought product from us 10 years ago, it works on the same switch, same cabling, same drivers, can be bridged. We constantly are doing firmware updates and adding improvements and features to our product. So we want to sell you a product and have you use it for decades as versus sell you a product that then becomes a fancy paperweight with our logo on it. So that's one side of it. We call it just we're always evolving. And in a world where your car can get an over-the-air update and fix an issue or make it faster or make it more efficient, we feel like we should be able to sell a box that can take updates and continue to work for a long period of time. Our newest product is our Max Color, which is 4K 60 444, completely lossless, certified Dolby Vision, HDR10, HLG, every HDR format you can think of. It's 5-watt PoE. It's on a gig network. It's phenomenal. We've won a ton of awards, and it's the same performance as running fiber, and end to end, and just super robust product, and very proud of it, and just amazed. I sent a text this morning from a commercial integrator event 9 years ago in California, and they messed up my hotel room, so they gave me a villa that was right on the water. And I sent the picture out to the team, and I said, I cannot believe that this villa that I got was 9 years ago at this commercial integrator event. And then somebody replied back and said, and to think I was green and that was my 3rd year with the company. And we were there with our 2G 1080p product, which we still support and still build today. So just, we've been around a long time, basically created the category, doing HDMI over IP. We're a heck of a lot of fun. We build some cool stuff.
Well, Taft, we appreciate the work that you guys are doing over at Just Add Power. I call it the Lord's work. It's, you guys are the boots on the ground in a lot of cases, making the mistakes and learning and trying new things. And we as a community get the benefit of that. So we very, very much appreciate the work that you guys do over there. Taft Strickland from Just Add Power. Taft, thank you so much for coming on.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Great to be here. So.
And thank you all for joining. Be sure to watch next time.